We are going to discuss change talk. And when we think about the idea of change talk, really what we're thinking about are four different categories of talking, right? And that includes disadvantages of the status quo, advantages of change, optimism for change, and intention to change. Now, change talk is the kind of talk that we want our clients to engage a lot in, because change talk, as we know, is likely going to lead to long-term sustained behavior change. So the more someone engages in change talk, the more likely they are to engage in that long-term behavior change, right? So it's a good thing for our clients to engage in this. But there's four different types. So that disadvantages of status quo essentially says that there's a reason or concern, or there's a reason for concern or discontent with how things are. So if one of your clients comes up and starts talking to you about being concerned about how things are, or they're not really happy with this kind of what's currently happening in their life in regards to that health behavior change or that health behavior, that falls under the disadvantages of status quo. The second category is advantages of change. So this is when your client actually starts to voice and talk about the different potential advantages of them changing. So if they do make this health behavior change, they're going to do this, that, and the other. They're going to feel better. They're going to fit into their genes. They're going to be able to run around with their grandchildren, whatever it may be. Number three, or the third category, is optimism for change. So this is when your client starts to kind of show that they have confidence and hope in their ability to change. And then lastly, the fourth category is intention to change. And this is when your client actually indicates that they are planning on doing something. They have a desire and a willingness to that commitment or to making that change. So let's go ahead and break each one of these down. I have different kind of examples of what your client might say to go into each of these categories. So the first one, disadvantages of status quo. If your client says, I can see that in the long run, this is going to kill me if I don't make a change. Or, I'm ruining my life. So those are two examples of disadvantages of the status quo. Now let's talk about examples of advantages of change. My boys would like it. They're always after me to exercise. Probably I'd feel a lot better. At least it would get my wife off my back. Again, those are highlighting the advantages that would happen if they make that behavior change. Here's our examples of optimism about change. I think I could probably do it if I decided to. I did start working out a few years ago. That was tough, and it took a few tries, but I did it. And lastly, my family would be there to support me. Then the last part, or the last kind of category of change talk, is intention to change. And examples include, I definitely don't want to keep going the way I have been, and I've got to do something. So those are all great examples, and I want you to start listening to your clients and how they talk with you, and hopefully you're hearing some of this change talk. So there are many different ways to responding to change talk, elaborating, reflecting, summarizing, affirming, and then raising possible problems and potential challenges. And we're going to spend some time on each of these. So let's go ahead and start with elaborating. So this is straightforward. Encouragement, we want them to continue to engage in this, continue to talk about this specific behavior. So here are some ways that you can do that. You can ask your client, what are other reasons for you to think that you can succeed? Another one is, how else could you do it? So again, just asking them to continue to talk about it. Reflecting. This is when you selectively reflect themes, experiences, ideas, and preferences that suggest the client's perceived ability to make the change. So an example of this is, you quit smoking once before, you can do it again. A third way of responding to change talk is summarizing, and this is when you essentially gather these different pieces of confidence statements and put them all back together in one statement. A fourth one is affirming, and this is simply commenting positively on what they've said to you. I think that could work, or I bet your family believes you can do this. And then lastly, responding to change talk, you could do so in a way that raises possible challenges. So this helps stimulate further thought and potentially even specificity. So what might you do if blank? Or how would you respond if blank? And what do you think about, or what would you think if this happened, right? So I use this raising possible challenges a lot when I work with my clients, because sometimes I want them to figure out something that I'm thinking, but I don't want to say it out loud. So if I ask questions in a way that kind of puts these potential challenges in a highlight, right, where they have to think about it, that's really helpful, because then it's them thinking about it rather than me saying it myself. So other ways that you can elicit change talk include asking evocative questions, using rulers, which I'll give you an example here in a minute. You can explore their decisional balance, talk about their personal strengths and their past successes. I talk about that a lot with my clients, especially with my well-vision assessments. I always talk about their past assessments, their past successes, as well as some of their strengths and weaknesses and how those they think those will apply into their experiences with their health behaviors. Brainstorming, you can look back and forward at hypothetical or past experiences like I just mentioned. But one of the ones I really want to highlight is this ruler. And you are welcome to use this with your clients, or you can do something simple that's just a 0 to 10 scale. You don't actually have to have a ruler that's right there. But I actually use this as part of my assessments with every single one of my clients. And after they've gone through and kind of answered some of their goals that they want to achieve, I always ask, on a 1 to 10 scale, how important is this change to you, right? And so again, it's a 0 to 10, with 10 being the most important and 0 being not important at all. And then say, all right, well, if you marked an 8, why are you not a 10? And why are you not a 0, right? So you can go high or low, and essentially what you do with that is when you ask them to go lower than the number that they chose, they are forced to think why they chose so high, right? And when you ask why didn't they go higher than the number that they chose, you're asking to understand why they didn't go higher. So it basically allows them to really critically analyze why they chose that number of importance to them. And sometimes during that process, they might actually even change how important that behavior is to them based on just that discussion alone. The other thing that's nice about this is that it provides you some insight into how ready they are to change, but it's also a nice thing that you can measure pre-post. So you can see if this behavior changes in value for them from the start of working with you to the end of working with you. So now I want you to kind of do a big picture learning recap. I want you to go back to the very beginning, and I want you to watch that video from the very first set of slides. And I want you to rewatch that video, and I want you to pull out the various MI tools, principles, and strategies that you see being used. I want you to write those down, and then I want you to understand them so that when we go into lab, you can start to utilize those in your lab. Here are some other great resources that exist. I have a few of these books in my office if you ever want to come look at them. Particularly the Motivational Interviewing in Nutrition and Fitness is a great book. So please come by, check them out. I'm happy to share. Okay, as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in lab.